Before we get into the actual discussion about the reality that faces us today, I do want to say a couple thank yous. First of all, Dan, to you and the Missouri Chamber for hosting this event. It's an important event for us every year to get together to have a dialogue about transportation. And a lot of the previous years of discussions have really culminated into where we are today. We've been talking about the issues that are really bringing us to where we are now for many years, and this conference has actually allowed us to have that facilitated dialogue. So Dan, to you and the Chamber, not just for the great event that we have here with the Creature Comforts, but really having the right speakers and the dialogue. So thank you and your team for hosting us for this great event. It's a critical time in transportation, as you've been hearing this morning from our previous speakers, both with Chairman Carmichael's introduction about the drastic action that the Highway Commission had to take last month at our January Highway Commission meeting about not adding any new projects to our annual 5-year revolving program, and really hits grassroots at home in our regions around the state when the Highway Commission had to make the very tough decision that they're not going to add any more projects to our cost share program. And let me talk to you just a little bit about what that means, and we'll get into some data about that. The very difficult decision, and we at the staff level talked about this for weeks and weeks and weeks about, is this really the right thing to do? But then we looked at the financial forecast, which also I'll talk about here in a minute, about why in the world would the staff at MoDOT want to make a recommendation to our Highway Commission that we would not want to leverage $1 for $2? Because that's literally what we do. Sometimes we leverage even more than that. And again, I look around at our partners around the room in here who we work so closely with. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Matter of fact, I talked to some folks last night from Springfield that said, is this really the right way to do this? But when you think and see what our core mission is in transportation, and you saw Ed's presentation on the long-range plan, Missourians told us overwhelmingly, before you invest in new transportation projects, make sure we take care of what we have first. And when we have a program that's dwindling, we've got to really tighten up our bootstraps and function or focus on preservation and maintenance. And that's a tough decision when the staff had to recommend to the commission, and the commission had to take that very drastic action because it's never happened before, to not add any new projects to the highway program and to freeze the cost share program. We're hoping that some action will take place, that'll be behind us in the distant past, in the not too distant future, but right now it is what it is, and it is a stark reality. So let's talk about, what does this mean? You saw Ed's slide, and I want to talk a little bit about this also, about what does this mean. We've had a very robust highway program, and again, a lot of thanks go to our partners around the state. This isn't done just by the Highway Commission and MoDOT staff. This is done by our partners in business, our partners in industry, our community advocates, our transportation policy makers have all helped us with developing a highway program that has been robust over a period of years. And you see the $1.3 billion that we did in 2009, and I'm going to get into some very specifics of what that bought us, because I've been a little bit criticized on behalf of all of our industry about, did we make the right decisions back when Amendment 3 was passed? $1.3 billion in construction projects. It's important to note that the budget of the highway program is much bigger than $1.3 billion, but the numbers I'm going to show you today really revolve around the construction projects, really where the product hits the road and the bridges and those. $1.3 billion, down to $700 million. It's actually a little bit less than that, which you'll see here in a minute, but about half the program. And a lot of that is due to the work that the commission did to right-size the organization. Again, you heard the chairman talk about that this morning. As a career MoDOT employee, and I talk to business people, and you do this quite often, it's still painful for you, But to go through a right sizing of an organization, to really get into your core of your organization, yeah, you have ebb and flows about when business is not good, you move some people around and maybe have to go through some downsizing periodically. But to completely reorganize your corporation or your company is what the Highway Commission directed MoDOT to do, and we did that over the past 2 years. And I'll tell you, it was very, very difficult to do. It shouldn't be easy. You know, it shouldn't be an easy thing to do. But when you cut 1,200 people from your staff that you know, it's a hard thing to do. 20% reduction, 126 people laid off. Most of the reduction was through attrition, thank goodness, and people making decisions to move on to other careers. But it's a tough thing to do. Reduction of 131 facilities, closing 3 of our district offices, which had been in place since the formation of the Highway Commission. Never made that change before. So very critical changes. And with the reduction in facilities, it allowed us to facilitate reduction in equipment. And I'm not just talking about pencils and paper. I'm talking about trucks and trailers and motor graders and dozers and backhoes, because it created redundancy, which allowed us to really recoup those costs into cash dollars. What it meant, what it equated to, or what it equates to, is $100 million a year in cash. It's not credit, it's actual cash. That $700 million number that you see there wouldn't be that high had it not been for the action, the tough, difficult decisions that MoDOT staff and especially our Highway Commission stepped up to do. Very, very difficult to do. But I believe that we've shown that it was the right decision to make. And I'll talk about our core business here as we move on. Now, what does that stark reality mean? We're not going to continue. It doesn't fix the problem. The right sizing of MoDOT does not fix our problem. We talked about that here last year. We talked about that here the year before, that the right sizing of MoDOT is not going to fix our funding problem in Missouri. It's not going to fix our funding problem in Washington, D.C. But at least it shows that state government can be responsive and that we can make our organization more efficient and get ourselves aligned to do business a different way with less people, less equipment, to save some dollars to put on the road before we go and talk to the citizens of Missouri about additional funding for transportation. And that's what that was all about. So now we're going to find ourselves in fiscal year 2017 with $325 million in construction projects. We've done one construction project twice that big. Actually, we've done several construction projects twice that big. So it shows you the challenge that we have facing us. Ed also showed this slide a little bit to you, but I want to go into it in a little more detail. That our problem isn't just a cash problem, you know, that it's not just about the lack of revenue coming in. You know, we've talked about the gas tax and those things where, yes, and I'm going to talk about those, that vehicles are more fuel efficient. But it's as much and maybe even more the fact of costs. It's the issues of the cost of doing business. And I want you to reflect and think about your own business out there. When the last time that you had a revenue increase was greater than 20 years ago, and I say a revenue increase, passing maybe a revenue increase on to your customers, had any type of cost increase associated with the products that you use in building your facilities or delivering your products to your customer, all of those things, we're still on a baseline of $1992, and you have a comparison here of 2 to 3 times the cost of doing business today as what we were doing in 1992 when our last funding increase took place. And the same goes with the federal level, which was 1993. The purchasing power of those products has dwindled that much. And it's not to say we don't benefit from tremendous competition. I look around the room and I see a lot of our consultant partners in here who have done tremendous work to reduce their overhead and the things that they do to deliver services for us on the project delivery side, and also to our contractors who are robust, is the word I would describe, about their ability to compete at delivering projects at a very, very reasonable cost. I mean, we're getting tremendous bids right now just because of the competition that we have in our state. And so we benefit from that, but you can see the cost of doing business continues to go up. And it's not just in these products, it's not just in concrete, steel, and asphalt. Our operational costs continue to go up. You know, we're having another one of our big years in snow removal. I hope maybe that spring warming is coming, but it's not. It's cold again outside. But we've had a very, very busy year of snow removal and ice removal. We budget about $42 million, and it's not a fixed number, but that's what we use kind of on average as sort of a target to look at of what it costs to do our annual snow removal process from winter through winter, fall, winter, and then through spring. We've already spent over $30 million. That's just on salt and labor, overtime, repair on our vehicles. It doesn't account for all the damage that has been done by vehicles sliding into guard cable, guardrail, running off the road and hitting our signs. And so all the repairs that we're going to have to do this spring, well, we actually have folks out there right now working on guardrail and guard cable when the weather permits to get out there and get those things fixed. When you drive on our interstates, I'm sure you see the little pink paint, orange paint that's marked up for our contractors, on-call contractors, to come out and get those things fixed. The cost of those continue to go up. And again, that is just another growth in cost that we're required to take care of. Let me talk a little bit more about snow removal, because it's an area that we were really concerned about when we went through our right sizing. It is one of the things that we look at as an emergency response. People think about, well, Dave, you're just plowing snow. It's not just plowing snow to us, and if you're the person that's driving out there, or your kids, driving out there, it's a big deal. And we've seen that. And we talk about the Southwest Airlines, and they missed the airport in Branson, and they went to the College of the School of the Ozarks Airport. We laugh about it a little bit. But it was interesting to me when we were in D.C. last week, the chairman and I and Jay and Vice Chairman Miller, and all the newspapers had the issue or the article about the Southwest Airlines airline that missed the airport. Nobody was hurt, but that article or that issue or that incident made it in almost every major newspaper. It was in the Washington Post, it was in the New York Times, it was in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and on the internet, everywhere. Nobody got hurt. Yeah, it could have been a catastrophe. And what did the plane have on it? Maybe 100 people, 125 people, I don't know, but something like that. The weekend of Thanksgiving, we had 9 people killed on our roads because of storm events or whatever. 9 people died, yet it only made the local paper. And so you're going to hear me talk a lot about today about the effects of the work that we do and the investment that we make in transportation on the quality of life in our state. And so we'll get into that. So it's not just about the cost that we have that's directly related to the products, concrete, steel, and asphalt. It's the cost of the quality of our life. It's, those of us in this room that have had a friend or a loved one or somebody that's been killed in a car wreck, you know what I'm talking about. Thank goodness I have not had that, but as Representative Henson was talking about, he is a firefighter paramedic. I worked my way through college as a paramedic, and I've had to witness that trauma. And I've gotten to meet people as I've gone around the state of Missouri, meeting family after family after family whose loved ones have been lost in a tragic crash on our highway system. It's a life-changing event, and we'll talk about that here some more. Part of the stark reality that we have is we're funded primarily by fuel taxes, 17 cents at the state level, again, from 1992. As you remember, it was graduated in 2 years, 2 cents in 92, 2 cents in 94, and 2 cents in 96. But that's when it was initiated. And so we're still living off of that non-inflated cost. I do have to go back. I want to talk about something. Ed picked on me a little bit when he was talking about my poor old Ford diesel pickup that I drive. And you see the price of fuel in here at $1.30 a gallon, Well, my pickup is a 1999, and yes, I am a little obsessive compulsive. And I remember when I bought that pickup, Ford diesel, by the way, Commissioner Smith. If Commissioner Kehoe was here or Senator Kehoe was here, I'd say the same thing. But that Ford pickup, I bought it because at that time, 1999, diesel fuel was 85 cents a gallon. So, you know, one of the reasons I bought it is because of the fuel efficiency and longevity of the engine, Ford truck, by the way. And so the longevity of the product, 85 cents a gallon. 85 cents a gallon for diesel in 1999 is probably much lower than that in 1992. And at that time, in 99, the fuel taxes for diesel, if you add them together, 17 cents at the state level, 24.4 cents at the federal level, 41.4 cents. Almost half of the price of that gallon of diesel that I put in my diesel pickup were taxes. Today, I think it's $3.69. I can't tell you the price of a gallon of milk, but I can tell you the price of diesel or gasoline in Jeff City. I don't know why it is, but it just is. My point is that we haven't kept up with the cost of inflation, and we are living and now surviving on the successes of our fuel taxes that we have at the state level. We still get some dollars, a significant amount, about $250 million each in the areas of a sales tax on vehicles and license and registrations fees. So I don't want to discount those. They're still very, very important. But 70% of our revenue, both combining state and federal revenue, come from fuel tax on vehicles that's over 20 years old. So it's a huge issue that we're dealing with. So let's talk a little bit about federal fuel taxes. And I can't say thanks enough for Tracy Hinkey coming. Those of you who know her past, is she is somebody who has been a go-to person in Washington, D.C. when she was working for Senator Bond. She knows more about what goes on in the inner sanctums of Congress than most. I don't want to pick on the Congress, but she knows a lot, and a lot of the staffers do, especially the senior staff, and that's why Tracy moved on to Senator Blunt, because of her wisdom, and she really knows what's going on, especially in the area of appropriations. And she talked about what's happening at the federal level with federal funding and what's going to happen with reauthorization, and really the ultimate, what I call the gorilla in the room, is what are we going to do about the trust fund. And at the same time, we were in Washington, D.C. last week. U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary Fox actually spoke to our large transportation group that has an annual meeting out there. It's called the Transportation Research Board. It has, good Lord, probably 1,500 people at it. And he spoke at the conference, and he actually showed what he called a countdown clock. And as Roberta and I, our Chief Financial Officer, talked about, it really doesn't show it fast enough, but it's still telling the story. And what the story is what's happening with our federal revenue that are dedicated for transportation funding. And at the same time, when I got back, by the time I got back to Jefferson City, Kevin Ward, our partner, sent us these charts that US DOT and Federal Highway sent out to all the division administrators around the country, really showing it in projections. And I want to show you these two charts because, again, we've been criticized by some that you guys are creating a skies falling scenario. We're not making this stuff up. We've been talking about this for 2 years, and now the future is now, as we've talked about in our presentation. The first one I show here is the mass transit account. And it's probably a little difficult to read the numbers, but the numbers aren't really the important feature. The issue that I want you to see is the downward trend. And what's happening by the time we get down to September is there's going to be no money in the mass transit account. And about a third of all of the trust fund dollars and now the general revenue transfer that's in the trust fund, about a third of those dollars go to the mass transit account. Okay? Here's the one that affects us here at home probably the most, not to downplay the importance of transit, but here's the highway funding. And we're going to kick the can down the road a little bit, make it for a few months here this spring, and then whammo, it's going to hit us. And the projections show that we're not even going to make it to the end of the federal fiscal year, that we're going to get hit in August. We're going to run out of money in the trust fund to get our reimbursements. And those of you that may not follow it closely, we just don't get checks that come in periodically from the Federal Highway Administration and the U.S. Department of Transportation. Wish we did, Kevin. I wish it was a grant program, but it's not. It's a reimbursement program. So we have to pay, we, Missourians, we pay for the project. We pay the contractors, we pay our partners through the consultants, we pay them, and then we send a bill monthly to Federal Highway, who gives us a reimbursement check. Well, the day's coming when we're going to be sending bills to Federal Highway and they're going to say the account is empty. And so that's what we're talking about here today. And the key message that I want you to know, and you heard Tracy talk about it, if any of our congressional delegation were here, they would tell you the same thing, is we've made some assumptions that Congress is probably not going to let the trust fund run out. Don't know that. We're a little nervous about that. Haven't been in this situation before, but we really think that they're not going to let the trust fund run to zero and then we stop. But then what do you decide what's the number that's going to be in federal fiscal year 2015 that they're going to be at? We are pretty sure, I'm going to say we know, we don't know anything, but we're pretty sure they're not going to be at what we would call the 40 billion number, which has historically been the safety lieu number that we have kind of used as the benchmark for the highway fund. They're not going to be at that. Matter of fact, we're even below that now with the rescission that we got last year. We're even below that. So what's the number? Well, Roberta and Ed and Kathy and I sat around and we said, look, we got to pick some numbers. And Brenda's the brains of the business in financial services. We've got to pick some numbers that we're not, you know, crying wolf, but we're also being realistic because of the very issue that we have here. We don't want to cancel projects. We don't want to move projects out of the STIP. So what we did is we made the decision that we're going to say, okay, it's going to be about a 19 or 20% reduction. And so that's where we ended up having to make, even from the forecast that we did when I presented the long-range plan to the commission in November, we've had to change our numbers since then, and I'm not confident that we're not going to have to change them again. We vetted this through our congressional delegation, and I can't say thanks enough to them when we were out there last week, because I asked every one of them, are we about in the right place? Are we being too conservative? Are we crying wolf? Or what are we doing? They said, no, you're about right on, Dave. That's exactly about where you need to be. Best case scenario is you probably could assume a 20% reduction. It could be even worse than that for at least a while. And so that's why we made the decisions that's got us to where we are right now. So let's talk about what this means. For us to be able to do what we call our taking care of the system, it's a term that we use for describing. We have a 34,000 mile, it had 33,000, but it continues to grow. It never gets smaller, you know. But it's about 34,000 miles of roads, 10,400 bridges. For us to be able to keep the system in the condition it is today, and if you're from maybe the rural parts of Missouri, Estill and Blake, you'll be the first ones to attest to this, we've still got a lot of work to do in rural Missouri. Because our focus with Amendment 3 was on the highest volume roads. And the money started running out before we got to all the minor roads. We worked on some of them, the highest, what we call the major minors. That seems like a little bit, but anyway. But those roads that carry the most volume of traffic were the roads we worked on earliest. And you know what? We made a lot of difference. But to us, to keep the system in about the condition it is right now, would cost us $485 million a year. Now, okay, Dave. In 2017, how in the heck are you going to do that with $325 million in contractor awards? There's no manna from heaven, right? So we have a system that requires $485 million a year just to keep it in status quo. And every year, we talked about it in here earlier, that it's pothole season. Actually, it's going to be a little bit later because the ground's frozen again. But as soon as it thaws out, they're going to start springing up again. And so we're going to have to deal with that. And so $485 million. Right now, you know, our system is set up where we have about $460 million that we dedicate for what we call taking care of the system. Our district engineers have this, what we call a pot of money called flexible funds. They primarily use those flexible funds for the very same purpose, because the system is that large and there isn't enough dollars to spread around. But it's their decision, their region's decision. And so that's about what we need to invest, but it's going down significantly. From 2005 through 2010, we invested, I talked earlier about this, we invested about $1.3 billion in construction projects. This was the combination of Amendment 3 funds that you also graciously helped us get passed, and the ERA funds, the stimulus funds that were approved in 2009. So they actually allowed us to move out one more year in delivering a pretty robust program. And we did a lot of great things. The very first stimulus project in the United States happened where? Tuscumbia, Missouri. The contract with the contractor was signed at the 1 nanosecond after President Obama signed the bill. It was that important to us to get that project ready and get it under contract. Yeah, we wanted to publicize it, but any of you who have seen that bridge, former chairman of the commission, Rudy Farber, stood underneath of it and chunks of concrete were falling off. Not because we staged it that way, it's just because it was that deteriorated. You remember that. It was. We had to move the tables and all that stuff out from underneath the bridge. We were going to do it under there and pieces were falling off. The contractor said, no, our liability insurance. It's not to make light of it, but it was that important to us. It was that important to us. And I'll tell you what, there was some criticism again about what in the heck is the Highway Commission doing building a bridge out in the middle of nowhere? Well, I'll tell you what, if you're from Miller County, that's a pretty significant project, pretty significant bridge. It's about a 70-mile detour one way and about a 50-mile detour another. And that bridge was pretty popular. There's a little convenience store, just to get off topic a little bit, but it shows you how important these projects are to the community. There's a little, at the end of Route 17 there, convenience store. And I'll tell you what, those folks were pretty happy, both with the contractors' crews that were working there during that project, because they were really concerned with closure of the bridge and the traffic not stopping there. But they were very, very happy people when that bridge was opened up, because now they've got a bridge that's going to last 100 years and they don't have a bridge problem anymore. Pretty happy customers there. So we got a lot of work done with Amendment 3 and with our stimulus funds. And you know, I get asked a lot of questions about, well, Dave, what's the number? What is the number that you need to be at to be able to be satisfied that you're getting what you want? And the answer to that question is, you know, is it 1.3 billion? Is it 1.5 billion? Is it 2 billion? Is it some esoteric number that's just ridiculous? And it's really about, what do Missourians want? And it goes back to Ed's presentation on the long-range plan. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Let's talk about some of the deliverables that we got with our Amendment 3 funds, because these are the kind of things that when we're doing a program, a construction letting of $325 million a year, we're going to see less and less of. And ask yourself, is this what we want in our state? Here is a picture of this is a single point interchange. We still build a few of them. We're doing a lot more diverging diamonds. And we're very proud of those. And as I go through these, I'm going to talk a lot about how we have set the stage in our state that are models around the country. I say thank you to Kevin for his comments about how we get tapped, about how the heck do you guys deliver these things and get away with doing this stuff when we can't do it in our state? Well, maybe we are sneaky, but we have evolved, and we're doing a lot of projects that are very innovative. The very first diverging diamond in the Western Hemisphere was done at the Kansas Expressway in Route 13 in Springfield. Becky and her team did a great job with that project. Never been done in the Western Hemisphere. One of our MoDOT project engineers, actually, when we were working in Kansas City during Amendment 3 period, we were actually building the Kit Bond Bridge, And we were working at 435 and Front Street. Those of you that know that area, it's very congested, a lot of truck traffic there. But there's a lot of tight right-of-way in that area. There's convenience stores and businesses there, truck dealership. Anyway, the point is that project manager was trying to find a solution because we couldn't fit a single-point interchange. We were going to end up spending more money on right-of-way than we were on the construction of a single-point interchange there. Yet we needed the capacity to get the traffic through that interchange. And Susan McCubbins, who was our project manager at that time, went out and Googled all kinds of different things, and they actually discovered this single-point interchange in France. And it was an old project. It was built right after World War II. It had been there for years and years and years, and they thought, you know what? Let's see where we can go with this. Instead of just saying, oh, there's no way we can do this in Missouri, you know what? We're going to research this a little bit. And I have to say thank you to Federal Highway Administration, because as we started to mature this process, they said, well, let's go to Turner Fairbanks in Washington, D.C., and then we'll run it through our simulator, and they have a lot of elaborate exotic modeling features out there. Before we build this on our interstate system, we probably ought to be pretty confident that it's going to work. Long story short, maybe long story long, it works great. And there are states all over the country now who are using that model for diverging diamonds in place of these single-point interchanges that you see here, because they're about half the price and they move just as much traffic, and some of us would argue that they're even safer than a single-point interchange. So a lot of progress being made there. Boy, does this look familiar if you're from Kansas City. Remember the Paseo Bridge in the infamous cold weather when the hanger straps busted? We structural engineers do. Sorry, Dennis, I put my name as a structural engineer, but I'm in marketing and sales now, and so. But that bridge, the Paseo Bridge, which was originally a toll bridge for the city of Kansas City, and the Highway Commission actually managed the toll bridge when the Paseo Bridge was built. But I remember Dad going through there throwing quarters in the basket when we go across it. Hanger strap broke, and there's the problem with a suspension bridge is there's very little redundancy. And we were very fortunate that only one hanger strap broke. If both of them would have broke, we would have had a major catastrophe there. That facilitated the desire to get that bridge replaced much faster. Fortunately, with Senator Bond, and yes, it was an earmark, $50 million earmark that Senator Bond got for that bridge project, that we were able to fast-track that bridge through, again, a very innovative process that our legislature and Missourians allowed us to do design build. It was one of our pilot projects, the second pilot project for design build we were able to do on that project. And the community was involved in the aesthetics of the bridge type selection. And I have to say thank you to the community for working with us, because we were a little concerned about how they were going to be engaged and keep the confidentiality, all the things that concerned us about the procurement on design build. It worked great. Everybody had a lot of ownership with it, and those of you who drive over that every day, it is truly an iconic structure, a signature bridge, but it is really a showcase for Kansas City, and we're very, very proud of that. Came in ahead of schedule and under budget. And here's another view of the same bridge, Kit Bond Bridge. Here's something that, you know, it may not show you how important this is, but I want to talk about this for a minute because it came up last month at the commission meeting, and I commend the commission for not making really a big issue when they could have. And this has to do with really the diversity of our state. You know, we have very, very big urban manufacturing facilities, and our core cities are just, there's a lot going on there. But you know, when you don't have to get very far out of our urban centers and you find out that we are a rural agricultural state by foundation. And this nice lady made a comment, and it, you know what, you have to think out of the box. And this lady made a comment about, you know what, when you run out of money, maybe you need to make some decisions about, you just need to abandon 8,000 miles of road and just take care of the roads that have the most traffic on it. And obviously the question is that's not the way we have our state. You know, it's just as important if you're from, yes, Tarkio, Missouri, Atchison County, Missouri, and you're an agribusiness person up there, it's just as important because your product affects the economy of our state just as much as the person who's working at the Ford Claycomo plant, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. And so the work that we do, four-laning our non-interstate highways, have had a tremendous effect on the connectivity, and we've even seen the benefit of using Route 36, for example, which I think this is a picture of that, of the benefit of having these corridors, because if you're in the truck business, and Tom, you could echo this when you hear this, is it's about on-time delivery. Really, truckers really don't care which routes they take. What they want to do is make sure they're going from point A to point B in the most efficient manner, and time is money, as we talked about with UPS here. And four-laning Route 36, and I'm going to talk about a lot of routes here, this picture represents those corridors that you may think, well, the traffic isn't 80,000 vehicles a day, but it's important for the safety features and the economy of our state to move the goods that connects our entire state together. And that's what Amendment 3 allows us to do. I remember Commissioner Schramm, Marge Schramm, God rest her soul, I remember her talking at one of the commission meetings, and she said, do we ever finish anything? And this was before Amendment 3. She made the comment about we're doing these little pieces. And I remember being a district engineer in Northwest District in St. Joe. We only had the money to do a 5-mile piece of 36 or a 5-mile piece of 71 highway. And Amendment 3 allowed us to change course there to say, no, we're going to do these in big pieces, and we've got a plan to get them all done within a specific timeline, and we delivered some significant corridors. It wasn't enough money to do them all, but there's some major corridors. And again, our partners in Southeast Missouri on 67, who stepped up and paid 50% of the cost of four-laning Route 67 from Cherokee Pass to Poplar Bluff, and now they're going south to the Arkansas border, at least down to 160. And they would be the first ones to step up and say, where's Bill Robinson? I know he's here somewhere because he worked on it. And that corridor, not only did it help the economy of people going from Poplar Bluff to Farmington or St. Louis, but the safety features it provided. And I just can't say enough about that. It made a big difference. So, and I can go on because Route 65, Route 63, I mean, just all over. Route 71, we finished a lot of stuff on Route 71. Amendment 3 and the stimulus program allowed us to do those. And again, $1.3 billion in construction projects. Again, here's another photo that shows you that it may not be congested, but I'll tell you what, it's a safety feature, and it moves a lot of goods across our state. And I want to show this one here is, it's bigger than just the sum of the parts. And that what I mean by that is, I use the I-64 project. I wish Tommy Pearson was here, Representative Pearson, because on the I-64 project, we had a very, very bold, and I give Ed Hassinger a lot of credit for this, is we had a very bold approach to diversity, and especially in the urban parts of our metropolitan areas, the minority community especially, but it's also female contractors and female workforce, is they just didn't feel like they had a chance to be a part of the projects, and especially these bigger projects. And to Ed and his team, and to Dan and Beth Wright and their teams when we were in Kansas City on KC Icon, the outreach that they did, and Kevin and Federal Highway, because we did some things that were not normal, the norm for workforce development and inclusion of minority contractors and consultants in a different way. It got people trained and got people worked, and the exciting thing about it was you saw people out there that had a career, and that's why I wanted to show, in this case, these iron workers. These are people that actually have the pride of ownership and workmanship, and it put people to work. And so, yeah, we do have a project out there that's moving traffic, and it's much safer, but the pride of these people that built these projects that are going to be there for a long, long time is just exponentially greater. So I just thought it was very important to show it's more than just about concrete and steel and asphalt and cable stays and all that. It's about the people that built this stuff, and it's a partnership that did that. Okay, so here's where we are today, $685 million. We're at a program that's half as big. Not exactly, but you know what I mean. It's about half as big. That's the contractor letting. So we have started to fall off the cliff. It's not the end of the world. We're still above the $485 million to take care of our system. And so we're going to honor the commitments that we have put in the STIP. The commission is very, very adamant about that. And we are going to honor the commitments of the projects that are in our 5-year program today or the projects that we're going to honor now. And we have $685 million, and that's what we're going to build this fiscal year. Don't know what the feds are going to do at the end of the fiscal year. In 2016, we're going to be at about $585 million. I didn't show that bar chart in here, but you can see that we're gradually going down. But in 2016, this is state fiscal year, we're going to be about $585 million or $600 million. But in 2017, we're going to be at $325 million. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. A lot of things have to come together just to be able to have $325 million. Well, what do you mean there, Dave? Okay, let's say Congress fixes the trust fund, and they put more money in the highway trust fund than we have anticipated. You know, say it's the $40 billion level. Our issue then becomes at the state level that we're not going to be able to match federal funds. Oh, great, Dave. Now you're making it really complicated. Well, those of you who are in the business, you understand that with federal funds, you have to match any federal funds that come in. And the days of 100% federal funding on a project are mostly long gone. You have to typically do an 80-20 match. There's some customization maybe in some unique areas, but typically our projects that we do federal aid on, which are most of our highway projects that I showed you before, they're funded 80% federal and 20% state match. And if you're in the counties, when you're doing a county bridge replacement, it's 80% federal and 20% county funds of local funds. Same way with the city. And so in 2020, it's a little ways out, we have anticipated that we are not going to be able to match federal funds if all of our financial assumptions come to fruition. Nothing happens. If the federal funding problem is fixed today, our federal match problem hits us in 2017. Well, what does that mean? If we can't match federal funds. If we can't match federal funds, the funds that we don't use go back to DC and they go back into a bucket. And it's called the budget realignment process and redistribution. And every August, those dollars that are accumulated in this bucket go out for redistribution to all the states who were able to match all their federal funds. Missouri has always been one of the states that have received the redistribution. We have never, ever given back any federal money. And typically, we get the redistribution money that other states could not match. And it's a problem that happens around the country quite a bit. And, you know, it's kind of low-key because states don't like talking about it because, you know, if you're a state DOT and you're sending federal dollars back, I would think your customers, your legislature, your governor would be pretty upset about that. In Missouri, we've never sent federal dollars back, but we're poised in a situation if we don't fix our state problem, we're not going to be able to match federal funds regardless. It's all going to be about when's that problem going to hit us. I'm just really delighting you today, I know that. But that shows you how important this problem is that we get this fixed. It is really, really important. Okay, let's talk about some transportation investment and some transportation results. Okay, before 2001, this was what I tried to do here is sort of get a point in time of before we were using the bonding program, pay as you go. You know, back when those of us have been around, is whatever money came in is the money that we used to build our highway system. And so we sort of picked a point in time, 2001, is really kind of before we did what Roberta would define as our senior debt, before we did our first bonding program. About $487 million. Remember, that's 2001 dollars. And, you know, that was probably a pretty fair program back then. We weren't doing the mega projects that we have done with Amendment 3, but We were taking care of the system to a certain degree, and let's show you what we got. This is what we got for our investment prior to 2001 for about $487 million. Again, pay as you go. It may have gone up or down, but it was about $487 million in construction projects. In 2001, our major highways, and these are the 80% or 20% of our roads that carry 80% of our traffic, what we call our major highways, interstates, four-lane roads, the urban centers and those. 41% of those roads were in good condition. Remember driving on those? Don't you remember driving on those and thinking, oh, my back. The potholes were always out there throwing cold mix in it, smacking it with a shovel, and hoping that it would be okay. 41% of our major roads were in good condition. Remember, 80% of our traffic were on these roads. 41% in good condition. Bridges, 69% of all of our bridges were in good condition. And you'll see that our minor roads, 78% of those were in good condition. But here's a striking area. 1,098 fatalities. 1,098 fatalities. That was a common trend back then. I don't even know that we were even noticing it. 1,100 people killed on our roads in 2001. Through the period of the bonding program, Amendment 3 and ERA, again, back to the investment of $1.3 billion. Let's look at the period of during that bonding program and what it did for the condition of our system and the effects it had on our safety across the state of Missouri. Major highways, again, that same 20% of our roads that carry 80% of our traffic, we went from 41% of our system in good condition to 86% in good condition. Pretty much what you're driving on today is the work that we did there. Some of you remember Smoother, Safer, Sooner. Remember all those brands we did, marketing, marketing, marketing. We got a lot done. We got a lot done. And these were not inexpensive fixes. Going out and doing a resurfacing program on Interstate 70 or Interstate 44 is expensive because you got to use the high quality stuff, the product. And it's not cheap to do. But it raised the condition of our system from 41% to 86% good. We started making some improvement in bridges. Dennis would say, you're not going fast enough, Dave. Come on, let's go. And 76% of our bridges, but we're starting to get there. We're starting to see the progress made. We started putting a little more emphasis on keeping a major bridge. 211 major bridges in the state of Missouri. These are bridges over 1,000 feet long. We're starting to keep one in the pipeline, at least one in the pipeline all the time, and it's benefited us significantly. Minor roads, though, took a little bit of a hit because we were focusing on the major roads and maybe not as much on minor road condition, and they went down a little bit. But look what happened to fatalities, because we made a concerted effort. I give a lot of credit to Pete Ron and Kevin Keith about focusing on safety, and Leanna, she's around here somewhere, but about focusing on systematic improvements around our state. Not chasing crashes, we used to have these things called high accident locations and those kind of things. It's where traffic crashes happen the most. Well, they're at intersections, but typically people don't die at those. It's just a lot of property damage and congestion in those. It's the systematic approach to finding the areas where fatalities were happening, and there's no better example than I-70. I remember it like it was yesterday. 435 in Kansas City, the very first place we put guard cable up in the state of Missouri was on 435. And going in there, and it wasn't just chasing a spot where somebody crossed over and had a head-on crash. It was saying, nope, we're going to program these corridors, and we're going to put guard cable up. We're going to put rumble stripes in. We're going to put wider stripes so people have better visibility. But not just that. We're going to work closer with our enforcement partners. You saw Colonel Waplogal this morning. He's not making that up. We have worked very, very hard in our partnership to work together to get drunk drivers off the road, to get kids especially to wear their seat belts, to get us to not text and drive, to get kids to not text and drive, to stay awake if you're tired, get off the road. All these public service announcements through education And also with our EMS people. I don't say thank you enough to them, our emergency medical people who work in the trauma centers and helicopters and ambulances and those folks. It's, God forbid you do have a crash, that they get you to the emergency room within what we call the golden hour. And we had a great presentation last month at the Highway Commission by one of the chief surgeons in the trauma center up at Columbia, University of Missouri at Columbia in the emergency room, that if you're in rural Missouri, you have twice the likelihood of, if you're in a crash and seriously injured, of dying in that crash because of where you're at and the lack of access to a level 1 or level 2 trauma center. And you think we're in a progressive area where, you know, you get hurt in a crash and you're right in the emergency room and you're getting fixed. And the fact is, it's not. It's not there all the time. So we've made a lot of progress, but we have a lot of work to do, and that's my point. Again, 2014, it looks like we're going down, but the results, we're still benefiting from the benefits that we had through the bonding program, and you can still see that 89% of our system's in good condition, right? Bridges have improved to 80% good. Minor roads have still kind of held their own at 69%. Fatalities, as the Colonel talked about, are down to 750 fatalities. We're very proud of that, but 0 is the number. 0 is the number of fatalities. And yet we go to $325 million a year in construction projects, and the issue is going to be is, as we continue to decline, what is the investment that we're going to make that's going to take us back to where we were before 2001? Is that where we want to be as a state? Or do we want to be where we were and growing with what we invested through our Amendment 3 bonding program at those levels and through the stimulus program to have a very robust transportation system? And I'm leaving off a very important segment of our transportation discussion that we're having with our long-range plan, is this is not touching any of our other modes of transportation that we've been hearing so much from Missourians. Because we are a state, one of the few states in the United States, that literally has no state funding for other modes of transportation. Yes, we go through the appropriations process and a little bit of funding goes to Amtrak, and we have a little bit of money set aside for some highway safety things and transit services, but most of our funding, almost all, goes to highways and bridges. So what I want to say is, the thing I want you to really think about, and I had Mara do this, and she didn't want to do it, but I made her do it anyway. I want to strike you a little bit today, that maybe it's provoke you to think about, again, as I talked earlier about, if you're one of those families that were affected by one of those fatalities, this would say, yeah, Dave, I've seen this, I've been here, I've experienced this, and I want you to know how important this is that we don't want to go back to having 1,257 fatalities a year in our state. We want to do better than 750 fatalities in our state. But it isn't free. It isn't free. We have to invest in transportation, and safety is a very significant component of that, just as economic development and all these other features are too. But we're reaching a point where we don't want to go backwards, and that's why I put this slide in here, is to provoke you a little bit to think about, we don't want to be where we were 15 years ago. And so we are committed. We're committed to every dollar that we have available to us. We're going to invest at the priorities that we have, which is preservation and safety. That's really where we're going to be by the time we hit 2017. But the solutions are only growing, and the transportation funding issue is continuing to grow also. So we're not going to be able to accomplish what Missourians want and expect from our state. So with that, Dan, I'd take a question or two, but I wanted to say thank you to all of you, and this is an important time for us. It really is, and we're going to have to make some decisions this year, because I don't see us coming back and having this conversation for many years in the future because of the way that the Constitution's set up. You know, the presidential election is going to be in 2016, and so we may not be back till 2018. So it's a very significant time. So I don't want to see us pass this up. Our job as the staff at MoDOT and the Highway Commission is to present you with the stark reality that what we have, again, I don't want to alarm you, but the time is now and the future is here. So it's time to work on it.